Hey guys, welcome to this latest episode of the show. We have a tremendous guest in the house today. As you already know, please continue to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, share the content within your community. Let's continue to grow this channel together. Today I have Professor Jeff Fellenzer on the podcast with me. He is a respected sports journalist, a media expert, and a professor at the University of Southern California in the School of Communication and Journalism. Professor Felenzer spent many years working as a journalist with the Los Angeles Times, where he covered and analyzed major developments in the sports industry. Today, he teaches about relationship between sports and media and business, and also helps prepare the next generation of sports professional. Professor Jeff is also a voter for the prestigious Heisman Trophy in college football, giving his unique perspective on one of the most prestigious and iconic honors in college football. With decades of experience in sports media and education, he brings a tremendous insight into the sports industry and how it's evolved over time. We're truly excited to have him on the podcast today to share his knowledge and experiences. Professor Fellenzer, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Femi. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Did I miss anything in my presentation?
I think you ought to tell your audience how we met.
Yeah, we absolutely. I have to share the story. I got the opportunity to meet you last summer in Las Vegas during the sports business classroom. It's funny enough because I had Bobby and Eric a couple of weeks ago also on the program, and Professor Fellenzer is one of the most down to earth individuals that I've met in a long time. We got to connect, have conversations throughout the week in Las Vegas. He was there also to assist us in how to approach interviews and build your resume for aspiring young or old people that are trying to enter this sports workspace, pretty much, if I can put it like that.
Yeah, thank you. I would tell you, Femi, one of the great gifts in my life is the opportunity to be part of the Sports Business Classroom program, which is part of the NBA Summer League every year in Las Vegas during it's a week-long program during the 2 weeks of the Summer League. So the games are going on downstairs, as you now know, at Thomas and Mack Center, while we're doing our program upstairs. And I give Warren Legary and Albert Hall, who own and operate the Summer League, credit for deciding to create a program to help folks break into sports. It's not just students. Everybody becomes a student, right? But it could be people that are young professionals. They could be mid-career professionals that have always wanted to break into sports and just were never able to somehow. The time was never right. So it's a chance to come and learn on a variety of different topics, more related to the NBA, but I think the skills are very transferable, whether you're studying a salary cap or data analytics, scouting, media broadcasting, whatever area it is. I think it just allows you to get a feel for what it's like working in sports. As I said, I think the skills are transferable. And so my role is to come in and help students get a little closer to having the skills once they learned whatever the area is that they want to focus on. And as you know, students pick a major for the week. My thing is okay, let's help get you closer to where you want to go and how to put your best foot forward in networking, resume building, interviewing, writing cover letters, follow up, or just crafting an elevator pitch. And I think I give Albert and Warren credit for saying, okay, we're going to give you skills and tools to help you learn more about this industry. But they didn't want to ignore that, the next half of it is also critical, which is how do you market yourself? Right. How do you put yourself in the best position? You put your best self out there so you can get closer to the job in the industry that you're hoping for. So, Femi, you don't know this, but I've been telling my colleagues, the people I work with and for at USC about this program. And we decided a while back, okay, could you take what you do every summer and bring it here? And I literally just got approval for my syllabus for a new 2-unit class this fall at USC called Finding Your Separators in Sports. So we're going to take what you went through in our sessions, both the sessions I led for everybody and then in our one-on-one sessions, and we're turning that into a class. We're going to meet once a week for about an hour and a half during the course of the fall semester. And I want students, we only have 20 spots, I want them to feel more confident and have more insight into what it takes to work in sports and the best way to find your separators so that you can stand out from the pack.
That's pretty amazing. I think that's really going to help a lot of the students out there to, have that little niche out there to be able to experience what, we've experienced pretty much, and what everybody experiences, having that interaction with you throughout the sports business classroom program. So
that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
And as you know, we might have talked about it. I think a big part of it is just confidence.
Right.
It's just developing self-confidence that you got this, you can do this. And I'm going to help the students see the steps that maybe they can take to, again, show their best self. But sometimes it's just a matter of just working through. You have more going for you sometimes than you even know. And I'm going to try to help bring that out for my students. And I hope I'm able to do that in the summer. Feedback's been good, and I'm so glad to reconnect with you.
We definitely will. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you first got into sports journalism and media?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to be involved in sports. And now, growing up, you didn't have as many ways to get into that space. Like, it's super competitive today. But then it was a matter of how you ever would get into sports, whether it was on the business side or the media side. I was kind of in the middle.
Okay.
My first thought about a job in sports was, I remember that what do you want to do when you grow up question, probably in middle school. I was like, general manager of the Dodgers. That sounded really good. And what's really funny about that is I didn't make it to be general manager of the Dodgers. But some of my best friends have been general managers of the Dodgers. It's the craziest thing, like really close friends. And I think that was the gods saying, you know what, we can't get you quite to where you were thinking, but we can get you pretty close and have good relationships.
That's good enough already.
So, yeah, I got to USC, and when I mentioned sports, they immediately sent me to the physical education department. And then when I was talking to counselors there about classes like biochemistry and kinesiology, I said, no, this isn't what I had in mind. And they sent me over to the communication journalism school. And I was like, well, this is closer to it. What I was looking for was something like we offer now at USC. We don't have a sports media or sports management major, but we do have a minor, a sports media, we call it sports media industries minor. So It gives you experience on the media side, on the business side. I got fairly close. I started out on the media side, and I just took advantage of opportunities. I got an internship with the Dodgers, and that opened a lot of doors. And then I was working with the Lakers. And while I was in school, got a master's degree, and I got my career launched in LA in a very vibrant market, and made really good connections, which started in college. And so it just kind of started off in the media area. And I got great experience. You mentioned working at the LA Times, phenomenal people that I worked with in several departments, including the sports stuff I did was on the side. I was working for other departments, but I got great experience. I worked for the National Football League, and I got more great experience working with good people and really top-notch professionals. And when I was at the LA Times, I had an idea for an entrepreneurial venture, which was a college basketball event in the Bay Area.
We're
I
gonna
had
get
met
to
Pete
it.
Newell. Yeah, Pete Newell was a legendary coach, general manager of the Lakers. He was the man that traded for, as GM of the Lakers, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You talk about a franchise-altering move. And Pete Newell became very well known as a guru for post players, big men. Everybody's been to Pete's camp. He passed away a few years ago, but before that, in the 80s and 90s, I mean, like everybody came to his camp, post players. I met him and was just taken by his incredible career, and I said, let's do an event that maybe honors him, brings attention to his career, because he retired at a young age for health reasons. And so I launched the Pete Newell Challenge in Oakland, where the Warriors played, up until they moved to the Chase Center a few years ago. And so I had the event for 10 years, and then I was teaching on the side, and they had an idea for a new class that combined the business of sports with sports media. Came to me and said, do you know anybody that could teach this class? And I said, yeah, me. I'd love to teach this class. I was teaching a small sports reporting class. This was an idea of a bigger auditorium on a big stage. And I said, I think it pretty much like reaches all points of my career. So started doing that in the spring of 1999. And here we are all these years later. I'm still teaching the class every Wednesday night. I'm having a blast. And I don't have a textbook because there's so many great stories in sports all the time.
Yeah.
That it's a matter of, we have so much to choose from, and what I can emphasize in this class, that I have plenty of material. Yeah. I generate the material myself every week. And I'm so proud of the students that I've had that have gone on and are doing incredible things on the business side of sports and the media side. We just keep kind of adding to, like the curriculum, and, now we're offering this new class in the fall. I created another class that combines it's the intersection of sports and technology, how tech has impacted streaming and, analytics, and all the ways that tech has impacted sports. So I think we're hitting on areas that are really relevant, important, and I think they help prepare students for careers, whether it's on the business side of sports or the media side. And it really encompasses, things that I've done at some point in my career.
You touching on technology, and I'm tempted to ask, how do you think the sports media landscape pretty much changed from the time you first started to now, and what role do you think technology and social media also played into shaping this new modern sports, industry landscape pretty much?
Yeah, well, it's changed dramatically. And what's changed is how we consume sports and how we communicate about sports. I mean, as you probably remember, you had your daily newspapers, and you had sports news that would come locally in your community, or it would come on a national network like ESPN. ESPN wasn't around until 1979, but that became another source of information on a national scale, although that really didn't take off for quite a long time, starting in 79, but it didn't really become a real vibrant part of our sports culture until many years later. But now where consumers will access sports through so many different ways and devices, and the fact that you have this device where you're not only communicating and making calls with and connecting with people, but this is the source of your sports news and information.
Indeed.
You watch sports, and you don't just get scores and have a digital presence. You watch it. And of course, now companies, sports networks and brands advertise more digitally than they do on television. And that just happened a few years ago. Like, that was a big thing. The margin kept shrinking, where it was like digital is getting closer to television. And television, advertising has been such a big part of consuming sports over the years on TV. And it finally got passed by, all of the digital channels and networks that we have, that's where the advertising dollars are headed more now. So I think people accessing highlights, not necessarily watching an entire game, but watching highlights on any of the platforms, and there's so many of them, whatever your favorite platform is, will have access to sports news and information. So what I saw happening, and this was a big fat part of my foundation for my sports tech class, which we started about 2014, so a little over a decade ago, was I saw this competition starting to take shape. I call it at home, where you have this great, your great home entertainment systems that make it more attractive to stay at home and consume everything there, not battle traffic and high prices for tickets and parking and merchandise and food, to stay home. So the at-home portion versus, we'll call it in-home, versus in-venue. And now when you do go to these sports stadiums and arenas, I mean, you've got technology like we've never had it before, providing a really powerful, visceral sports experience. Now, some people will tell you it's too loud. Some will tell you they like the vibe because it feels like a party. Some will say it's almost like going to a club. Tone it down a little bit. I've heard all of these things. But the point is that the teams and the leagues want to make sure that if they get you out of your home and into the stadium, that you kind of have a dazzling experience. And one of the first to really understand that was Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Because he heard everybody say, I can have a better experience watching the games, the Cowboys games at home, than I can going to a stadium. So he said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. You come to my stadium, and I'm going to give you a better viewing experience of the screens if you just look up than you have in your own home. And oh, by the way, if you look down, you can actually see the game in real time. And so that gave, so you have those incredible scoreboard that the Cowboys have, that other stadiums have replicated. But the idea was, when you go to a game there, you look up and it's hard to take your eyes off the screen. But if you look down, that's where the game is taking place. And I've always said that, as somebody that's been blessed to have attended a lot of incredible sporting events over the years, your currency as a sports fan is having been to the game. Not I saw it on TV or I saw it on my phone, but I was there. I rushed the field, or I was there with all of the, my brethren that follow this team, and we shared it, because sports is very communal. And that's really your currency as a sports fan, to tell somebody, I was there. What? You were there? You were at the game? I was there. So that's why I think the in-venue experience will never go away. But I think it's getting more challenging to get folks out of their home when you have so much to offer them if they stay home. Interactive networks, we're going to see more of that have statistical overlay capabilities for players. Before the shot goes up, they can tell you what their shooting percentage is, depending on what part of the court they're at. They're doing all sorts of interesting things. Steve Ballmer is doing it with the Clippers, with Clipper Vision. And so it's just it's an exciting time. Some people will tell you that it's too much, too distracting, but I would just say you can pick and choose, and you can sort of create your own coverage, in a sense, of what's most important to you when you watch a game. And you have all the statistical analysis in front of you as well. That can help you enjoy the game more. It's not much different than players. Do you want to load players up with all of this statistical information, or do you just maybe you give it to them in smaller doses, whatever they're comfortable with? That's kind of what fans are going through too. But they're going to have the technology, to make you feel like you really are there, putting a headset on or something that gives you an immersive experience. We're seeing that with a building like COSM in LA, which basically is like a it's like a sports bar on steroids. You sit down and you watch a game, and they have their own cameras in stadiums, and you feel like, wow, it's like another level of being there beyond a television camera. But you're there with people, so it's a communal experience, and all of these things are part of what's right now and what is on the horizon. There's things coming down the road we don't even know about, but it's exciting because it's fun to see what might be coming down the road.
Absolutely. I think, you've pointed out Steve Ballmer and the Clippers and the experience that he's trying to, give the fans right now when you go to Intuit Dome, even with the players as well, and the comfort that they get in the locker room. That in-venue experience is something that you see is more appealing to people nowadays. I mean, I've even heard, that's with San Antonio and Wemby having this idea of having fans standing up also and making noise with the drums and all that, giving that European experience out there, which is also great. I've seen in soccer in Spain, for instance, with Real Madrid, where the arena it's almost like a dome, but like an 80,000 people, like a 80,000 people capacity, where some games they will close the stadium, they'll close the roof. Some games they'll let it open. And I'm in Philadelphia. I'm a huge Eagles fans as well, and I've been hearing rumors about Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, also working towards building a new arena where it might possibly have an open and a retractable roof, because seems like if you don't have a dome nowadays, you can't host a Super Bowl anyway. So unless you're in the warm weather, so the in venue experience and adding technology and a better experience overall experience is definitely becoming more important. And yeah, Jerry was definitely one of the first ones there.
No doubt. We talked about this in my class just recently. It's like, if you're in Buffalo,
oh yeah,
do you need to have, if you're, for Bills games, doesn't it feel like it would be better to have a roof so that fans don't have to come out to the games and take a chance of getting frostbitten or something? Like, it would seem like a no-brainer. And like you said, see, that's thinking like next level, is like, if we put that dome on, then we have a chance to have other sporting events that we can't have if we don't have the roof. Now, the problem is a couple things. One, the coaching staff, players, others associated with the team might say it takes away a little bit of the home advantage, because it's harder on the visiting team to play in those conditions. We're a little bit more used to it. So, and the other, which is a valid point, the other thing to think about is, football is a lot different than baseball. Has huge inventory of games. They have 81 home games. And football might have 8 or 10.
Yeah, because it's about.
So can you get enough out of that investment with that few home games to make it worth your while to build, unless you have somebody that has sort of, is wealthy beyond, almost beyond belief, to where they don't mind doing that, but they may not see the return. The chances of getting a Super Bowl, you'd probably get one in Buffalo, because the NFL is always good about rewarding owners that make that kind of an investment. I don't know if we could get a Final Four in a place like Buffalo. I doubt it. I would just say they tend to go to places that are, at least a little bit warmer. So I don't know if you could get in early May or early April a Final Four, but you have to be thinking about, would it be worth your while?
It's a football
to add to that investment.
You never know,
Yeah.
And on top of that, one thing that I've noticed also with, whether it's a basketball arena or football arena, especially the ones in Philly here, they even host more than sports now. You got concerts, comedy shows, where those arenas fill up pretty quickly. We had, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, where they're even having like 2, 3 nights in a row out here and filling up like football
Yes.
arenas. So there's always a way to, maximize your return if you make, such investments down the line, I'm sure. So,
Well, that's a great point, Femi, because I've had a number of friends, contacts, professional that have gotten a start in their career, or at some point in their career, they worked on a team that was charged with trying to make use of the available dates at a stadium beyond the sport that stadium was principally used for. And it's a challenge. But there are, if you're creative, there really are ways to maximize the use of that space. And sometimes you just have to think outside the box and be really creative. But I would say for people who are wondering about breaking into sports, hey, if you've got ideas about how to use that space that teams have in a stadium or an arena for other things, like that's golden.
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be room for somebody that's great at sales and someone who is rich with ideas. I say that all the time. Like I think about like ways that you can generate revenue for a franchise. And boy, I'll tell you what, that's a golden ticket today. And the use of stadiums and arenas as revenue sources. I saw venues get very creative during COVID. At the Rose Bowl, they turned the Rose Bowl parking lot into a drive-in theater.
Yeah.
I thought, brilliant. You just drive up. They put a movie on a screen. You don't have to get out of your car. And that was one thing they did, at that time. And they used the grounds. The Rose Bowl's right in Brookside is a golf course. So it's right in the middle of a golf course in Pasadena. And they've turned it into grounds, and they have music festivals there. Like Coachella, which is very close to where I am now. I'm down in the Coachella Valley in the La Quinta, Indian Wells, Palm Desert area. And they saw the success of Coachella, the music festival, and said, why can't we do a musical festival on a different scale? But here at the Rose Bowl, with the grounds we have, the grassy area. And so now some of the most successful events at the Rose Bowl every year are the music festivals they have. So yeah, these are all the kind of things that we talk about in my class.
It's funny when you were, giving the advice to the new generation trying to break into sports. It made me quickly reflect on something that I heard Stephen A. Smith talk about from the first time he was at ESPN, his first ESPN stint until he got let go and then came back for a second stint, of which he's highly successful right now. But he was basically talking about how during the time where he was laid off, he wanted to take that time to think about how he can be an asset to the company. How much money can he bring more to whoever is going to hire him? And, the more money you bring to them, the easier it is for those, gigantic companies to give you a piece of the pie, because now you're not just working for them, but you're actually contributing in increasing the revenues that they're bringing. So that definitely resonated pretty well with me.
Femi, it's great that you brought this up, because you just hit right on something that I talk about all the time in my classes about breaking into sports. I said, here's the most important thing. How can you add value to your company? What is it? I say, what are your separators? But it boils down to number one on my list of keys to success in sports. And I think if you could say this in business or other things, but for me, it's sports, is the number one key to success. Make yourself invaluable. Doesn't matter what your role is. You might be just getting coffee, donuts. You might be picking people up at the airport, whatever it is. Bobby Marks will tell you that's how he got started with the New Jersey Nets. That's how. That's it. It was an internship. He picked people up at the airport. He hung around. He got, he became familiar with the landscape, and then he started to emerge as somebody that could create content that had value there. But it started with just being invaluable. So my point is always, if you want to really impress someone, cut to the chase and say, here's where I can add value. That's how people in the business talk in sports. And you just cut right to it. Here's where I can add value.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hit on some things that they think are like, even if it's not something that they particularly need at that moment, you're very likely to get I like the way the person thinks. And even if we don't have an opening now, they've planted a seed. Or I'm going to recommend this person to a friend of mine who's looking for someone that offers what he or she does. So that's what it gets down to. It's not like, why is this job perfect for me? Because I know everything there is to know about the team and I can tell you all about the history and blah, blah, blah. That's great for you, but what's in it for me? And that's another area where I kind of emphasize is think in terms of the person sitting across from you. Tell them what you can do to make their company more successful. And think of it in terms of joining a team, whether it's a sports job or not. Everybody's hiring someone to join a team sometime. Yeah. So put it in those terms. Here's what I can do to help your team. This is where I can add value. So your example of Stephen A. Smith is perfect. He figured out where he could add value. Mm-hmm. And it turned out he had a ton of value to add to ESPN.
Yeah. And you mentioned Bobby, we spoke about it when I had him on the show as well. And I was also even taking the example of Howie Roseman with the Philadelphia Eagles coming in as an intern as well, and making his way in, and then all of a sudden they kind of need a cap expert like a salary cap guru or whatnot, and then he doesn't really know much about it because he was, initially just an intern, but takes on to the responsibility of, what, I'm going to figure this thing out, and this is where my value is going to come from. And today, to me, the best general manager in the whole professional football.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, Bobby Marks started off playing football at Marist College, now Marist University in New York. I mean, he went there to play football, and he had a friend that worked for the Nets and said, there's a job here, an internship. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds fun. I can do that. Just kind of that's how he got launched. But he saw ways to add value.
Yep.
And Howie Roseman, another great example, is someone that did the same thing. So it's not like some magic formula. It's something, if you really think about it, put yourself in the position of the people that are there already in those places that you'd like to go. And I always tell students, do a lot of research on the jobs that stand out to you as being ones that you could see yourself at someday. Learn about them. Subscribe to the Sports Business Journal, which is like the Bible of the sports business industry. And become familiar with the people and the kind of jobs they have and the journeys they took to get there. And you'll be able to maybe start to see, have a vision for yourself and be familiar with the current trends and news and ways to add value. So that's to me, that's what the essence of it is figuring out where, I call it where your separators are, or your value is. And again, you don't have to, it may take a few years to figure that out, mm-hmm. but that's what I'm hoping to help my students do while they're in college, is to get closer to figuring out where your superpower might be.
I totally agree with you on that. You are a voter for the Heisman Trophy, which, obviously is one of the most, if not the most prestigious award in college football right now, and has been for the longest. How did you become a Heisman voter, and what does that responsibility pretty much mean to you personally?
Well, it's one of the greatest honors of my life, honestly. Femi, I followed college football so closely growing up. I still go to a different high school football game every Friday night with a group of friends. We call ourselves a Friday Night Lights group, and we're all over the map in Southern California. And so I started doing this years ago, but I started voting for the Heisman in 2007. And just to finish up with the group, I always feel like I'm getting a little bit of a look into the future, getting a chance to look at players at a young age and see the best teams, the best players. I've had players that I've seen on Friday nights in Southern California. I've had a chance to see them then in college, and I voted for one that I saw play in high school for the Heisman, Bryce Young, quarterback at Alabama.
Yep.
You know, he's playing in Southern California at a high school in Orange County, Mater Dei High, a powerhouse, and then goes off to Alabama. And 3 years later, I'm voting for him for the Heisman Trophy. I mean, and I had met him when he was in high school. It's great. I feel like I've just been immersed in that world for a long time. So I covered, while I was at the LA Times, I covered high school, college, football, and basketball recruiting. So I was very familiar with players and coaches. I had a good network. And they had an opening in the West region. Heisman is divided up into 6 regions, the Heisman voters. And they try to balance each region. There's I don't know what the exact number is in the West region, but I know there's 43 voters in California.
Okay.
And the coordinator for the West region was looking for somebody they had lost a member. The member had, usually it's, if they stop doing it, it's because they don't feel like as closely connected to the sport as they would like to be. If they're not covering it, and you don't have to be covering it like as a beat writer or columnist or something. But there was an opening for whatever reason, and they called a friend of mine, and he had retired. He was a former Sports Illustrated writer, had covered college football, and a newspaper sports editor. But he felt he was a little too removed from college football at this point. And so he called me to say, hey, they're looking. You think you'd be interested? And I said, I absolutely would be. So he put me in touch with the coordinator for the West region, and we kind of had he had a vetting process, took about a week, and said, I'm good, and I'm going to now discuss this with the overall coordinator in New York. And about a week later, he said, welcome to the family. And so I'd say it does change how you watch college football, because if you go to a game, and we talked earlier about, I always think there's great value in being able to go and see players in person. I go to showcase events during the course of the year where top high school players are. I like to be there and feel like I'm in the trenches. And so if you do that, you're not going to be as able to see as many games on a given Saturday, but you can catch up other ways. You can go online and see, you can record games, you can see highlights, you can stay as connected almost as if you were watching an entire game live. So I try to do a balance where I'll get out there when I can to see a potential candidate in person. But it just means that every week you're very dialed into college football. And I kind of have fun with it with my class. Every week, my Wednesday night class, I put my list of Heisman. I have my Heisman watch, and so I'll put my top 3 candidates for that week. If the voting ended today, these are my top 3, because there's 3 lines on every official Heisman ballot. That's all, just 3. So I put 3, and then I put a second tier of basically like honorable mention. Like these guys weren't on the top 3 list, but they're in the ballpark. They're the next tier. Then you get to the end of the season, and it's the Monday after the conference championship games, the ballots due. And I put as much thought into who I put in the second and third lines as I do the person I vote for,
Right.
because it means a trip to New York, and it means being involved as a finalist. That's a big deal, being a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. So I give it a lot of thought. And I like to feel like that, I do my homework, and I kind of try to go the extra mile. I talk to people. I talk to fellow voters. I always believe that I have the right amount of information to make a very educated and reasoned choice every year.
Yeah. Now you brought up Bryce Young, who, I think to me is a great example of, resiliency with, him coming as a Heisman, and then obviously having the trials and tribulations that he had in Carolina, being benched, and then take it up onto himself to just, continue to grind and have the season that he had last year, which I believe is just great. But I wanna know, when it comes to casting your vote, right? Because throughout the years we've had different positions winning the Heisman. Obviously you had receivers with Devonta Smith, who's one of my favorite receivers, being an Eagles fan. Fernando Mendoza last year as a quarterback. Travis Hunter the year before, where obviously him playing both ways in college, offense and defense, was a huge factor, I'm assuming, in some of the decision making there. But what is it that you really look for? What do you evaluate when you looking for when you looking to cast your vote? Is it mostly like statistics, team success? I heard you talk about, you talk to your fellow voters and stuff like that. What do you really look for when you try to cast your vote on a player?
Well, I try to be like as all encompassing with a player's profile as I can. Okay. I use this phrase a lot. Don't be a slave to statistics. Otherwise, you could just total up who had the most impressive statistics every year and just say, well, here's your list. Here's your group based on the best stats. Statistics at times can be a little misleading. I certainly value them, and they're a important component, but they're not the only component. And that's why I think it's good for a player to pass the eye test, for a player to have a big Heisman moment, as they call it. Fernando Mendoza certainly had a few of those this past year, especially that game-winning drive against Penn State on the road. Great catch by the receiver, by the way, Cooper. But so I try to be, I think, just have a more of a holistic view of all of the different categories that you would look at. Leadership, and Fernando was, I think, off the charts as a leader. Now, I had seen that because he was on the West Coast at Cal, so I saw him play a lot. He went to Indiana, and I was very familiar with him. Again, I think I had an advantage with Bryce Young because I'd seen him in high school, so I was familiar with how he carried himself, and I know the coaches at his high school, and so I would say it's Femi. It's like when you look at a resume, like you don't want to judge someone just on what's on a piece of paper.
Right.
You want to try to hear a little bit more about them. Obviously you have interviews. I can't do that, for a Heisman candidate, but I can certainly watch interviews. Mm-hmm. I can certainly read stories. Again, looking at statistics would be like looking at a resume and just saying, well, I'm going to hire that person without talking to them. Like I wouldn't want to do that. So I just try to pull a lot of things together, feel like I have a good sense of who this person is. You mentioned Travis Hunter. I had people ask me that year, what do you think? And a lot of people like the running back Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. Okay. I did too. Not to take a thing away from him. I had him number 2 on my list. But I had Travis Hunter because I thought the combination of being such an extraordinary athlete, being so impactful on both offense and defense, never wanting to come out of a game, I thought that's so extraordinary. I want to honor that achievement. He's not the best receiver. He's probably not the best cornerback, although I thought he could, and I still think he could be an all-pro corner.
Absolutely.
But I think the combination of receiver and corner and special teams, I mean, I thought I want to reward that achievement because it's so rare to see. That's an example of where statistics don't tell the whole story. They can tell a big part of it because you have statistics on both sides of the ball, but they're not elite necessarily on either side, the statistics. But if you put them together, the whole picture is there hasn't been someone that's done anything close to this in a long, long time, probably going back to Charles Woodson at Michigan.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing. I'm not sure if it was part of your evaluation and if for whatever it's worth, but I think in Travis' case, the loyalty, right, to stay with Colorado Buffaloes and Coach Prime, even though he could have gone to a bigger program for who knows. I mean, I'm sure he did pretty well with the NIL money that he got with Colorado, but he could have gone to a bigger program with no hesitation and probably still have a bigger chance to be a Heisman if he was still playing both ways there. So that was something that pretty much resonated pretty well with me also. Like, all right, I have the opportunity to go to a bigger program, but I'm going to stick with the guy who gave me my first chance. And I'm going to prove to everybody that you could go to a smaller school and still be able to be within the candidate or possibly winning it like it did.
Well, I think that really speaks to like what we were talking about looking at all sides of a player's profile. And one of those is, like you said, he showed great loyalty. And, he was involved in helping to build the Colorado program. And he didn't want to come off the field. And by the way, you're playing at altitude when you play in Boulder. So, like he just was a baller in every sense. So I thought of all of those things. And that's why I said, many, many times somebody that had done what Ashton Jeanty had done, and I had seen him play in person the year before. So I was very familiar with him. But I thought, as good as he is, and I have him number 2, I'm going to give the edge to somebody that has done just something I think is just a little bit more extraordinary. The idea of playing on both sides of the ball, playing at a high level, and being a lottery pick in the NFL. He again helped elevate the program, and Fernando Mendoza this year.
Yep.
They had the infrastructure in place, but they add him, and then they're off to the races and win the national championship. We didn't know that they were going to win the national title, when I cast my vote, but I felt like he had done so much to help elevate the program and reach another level by getting into the championship field and ultimately winning it all. But so those are some of the ways that you can, you find your own tiebreakers, what separates a candidate and why you might lean to one. You add up a few things and say, this is the way I see it. And the funny thing is, I get asked a lot, Femi, is, hey, you started voting in 2007. How many years have you gotten it right? Your vote.
Right.
And my answer is, I've gotten it right every year. They haven't always gotten it right. I've gotten it right every year. And I'll stand by my choices.
Okay. I would agree with you. I think last year it was fair for Mendoza, and definitely Travis and Ashton Jeanty. That was my top 2 the year before also. And yeah, I have no doubt that you got it right all the time. I'm sure you did. You've talked about the Pete Newell challenge earlier in the show, which is a college basketball doubleheader that you have in Oakland, that you like you said, created in honor of the great Pete Newell. Obviously, you already talked about what inspired you to start this event, but I want to know what did it take to turn this event to a successful and historic game, pretty much?
It takes a great team. I had really great people around me. I think it takes a vision. I think this is true no matter what it is, what event it is, or a team. A coach will tell you this, a general manager, is having a vision for what success looks like. And I just felt if we had, there was a way to honor this legendary Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame person in addition to being an incredible coach and teacher. So I just, the more I started to ask questions and people would say, whatever, if you're honoring Pete, count me in. Before we got this off the ground, I called Bob Knight, Mike Krzyzewski, Dean Smith. I called them all and said, if I can take this idea and put it in place and have this event and launch it in the Bay Area, would you bring your team out and participate? And everyone that I asked said yes. And they all came. There were very few that weren't, and the ones that weren't able to come out, it was usually because of the schedule the date didn't work. But in terms of just wanting to be there, they said yes. So I think it was having an idea, having a vision that people could connect with. And I thought they would be able to. I really felt like this was something important. And I give credit to my friend Randy Ryan. He had started the John Wooden Classic 3 years earlier. And I watched it flourish in Southern California. And even though I lived in Southern California, I still live, and Pete Newell lived in Southern California at the time, I felt that his identity would be better associated with Northern California because he'd been the head coach and won a national title at Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And before that, he launched his career as the head coach at University of San Francisco, which went on after he moved on. He helped build a program that produced 2 national championships back to back with Bill Russell. So I felt Northern California was the place to put it, and those great coaches that said I'll bring my teams out, yes, did, and we still hold the record for the largest crowd to ever see a college basketball game in the state of California, which I'm very proud of. And I, because it was a chance to just put the spotlight on someone that, by nature, he shied away from the spotlight. You'll hear so many stories about when he was at his peak as a coach at Cal, he was almost embarrassed at the ovations he would get when they would introduce him before the game as the head coach of the Bears, Pete Newell. And he tried to just arrive in a way out of the spotlight. There was no, he didn't want all of the noise and the lights and whatever. He just wanted to coach and teach. And so you couldn't help but just love the man. And I met so many incredible people that are friends to this day, really good friends, that were associated with Pete Newell, former players, friends of his. They would do anything for him because he was that special. So those years where I got a chance to lead the, our staff and putting the game together every year was just an incredible honor and blessing. And I'm still reaping the rewards from it today by the relationships that I have because of that event.
It is a very great event and a very great way of, honoring him, obviously. And hopefully it stays on for the longest. I got one last thing for you, Professor. I appreciate you again for your time, but I would do myself a disservice if I don't ask you about 2 of the most, in my opinion, amazing and promising athletes in both women basketball and men basketball that are currently playing at USC, Juju Watkins and Alijah Arenas.
Yes.
I just want to know, from your perspective and you being in a unique position to, see the excitement around them and them playing where you teach, what do you think the impact can be as players and human beings, not only on USC, the university, but also in terms of college sports and potentially the stars that they can become, respectively, in the WNBA and the NBA?
Well, first of all, I think it's great you've recognized both of them. Juju is special, and I would say I'm probably a little biased there because she's a former student of mine.
Oh, nice.
So she took my class a couple of fall semesters ago, and very present, very in the moment. I remember one time when she sent me a very nice note, an email. Like she asked if it was okay if she missed class. It was like 2 weeks down the road she was going to have to miss a class, and I'm very flexible with, especially with any student, because there's always a lot of things that can come up that might keep you away from class for a week, whatever. And athletes have travel and responsibilities, and so we work it out. But I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" And she said, "Well, I'm filming a Nike commercial." And I laughed and I thought, "Yeah, you know what? If one of my students has an opportunity to film a commercial for Nike, and probably be well compensated and make an impact," I said, we're good. Well, I'll see you in 2 weeks, So, but very respectful that she sent the note, and I enjoyed having her in class. And what she did on the court is, I mean, she is one of the handful of greatest women's players already, just after 2 years, that I've ever seen in my life. I still think Cheryl Miller is probably number one that I can remember seeing play, but Juju is right there. She's just a special talent. I think she's a special person. I think she has such a bright future. I can't wait to see her after she finishes her rehabilitation from her knee injury. And I think the great thing about the women's game, and why I just love the women's game so much, is the players are very motivated to be the best they can be in college. They tend to stay, use their entire eligibility before they move on to the professional ranks. Obviously, that's part of that is the salary structure is not what it probably will be after the collective bargaining agreement is signed. But it's fun to watch players develop and be great in college and be really good with a team for several years. So that's really exciting. And I think the chance next year that USC has with Jazzy Davidson, the point guard who was the freshman of the year in the Big Ten and probably the freshman of the year in the country, certainly right at the top. And another couple of really good recruits coming in, Juju coming, if everybody comes back. Mm-hmm. And so I think future is super bright for Juju. I think both on the court and off the court, she has a chance to make an impact in business and other areas and as a role model, little girls that come to games to watch her and just be close to her. And it's a really cool thing to see. And that a big part of what we talk about in class these days, Femi, is the rise of women's sports. So it's an incredible time right now for women's sports. And Alijah, it was like such a bright future. We saw glimpses of it. He kind of came on right at the end of the year. He didn't shoot the ball well when he came back, but he was out there playing, and he plays hard. And I think he's a winner. And I hope he stays in college, because I think to play at least one more full year healthy would be important for his development. I think he probably would still be very well regarded and picked by somebody if he came into the draft this year. Yeah, I hope he stays, because I think having a full year, hopefully injury-free, will be important, but also a bright future. Plays inside, outside. He's long at 6'6", good eyes, obviously raised in a basketball family with his dad, Gilbert. So I think it'd be very exciting next year for those two if they're both back playing in college, and that's what I'm hoping. And in the case of Juju, I think she's has a chance to go in next season with USC ranked right at the top. I think a top 5 team going into next season.
Yeah, I don't know if Gilbert is going to be okay with you getting Alijah back in college. I mean, it's always a very interesting conversation figuring out how long these prospects should stay in college, and the same conversation is even had in the women, because some people might argue that having these players, exciting players like Caitlin when she was still in college, Angel Reese, Juju now, Flo J, maybe getting into the WNBA earlier might be able to bring more revenues and more fans, to the W. So there's always this conversation as far as like the eligibility issue and how soon can these players declare for the draft and get into the pro sports. But, it's always a fun conversation to have. I'm really, really excited also about these two prospects. I mean, I just started really getting myself in the WNBA and women basketball in general, maybe like 2-3 years ago. So it's been super exciting, and watching Juju play, I cannot wait to see her get back on the court after that gruesome injury, obviously, that she had to deal with Alijah with the accident also. But, I'm excited to see what she can also bring back. Hopefully she gets fully recovered and is able to get back and even be better than what she was prior to the injury.
Well, yeah, and I would just add too, Femi. I think this year, going into the tournament, starting this week, I think the UCLA women with Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice and Gianna Neepkins and Gabriela Jaquez, I think that team is super special as well. And I think they will have a chance to make a real run. They're the number 2 overall seed behind UConn. Mm-hmm. I think they're better than last year. And obviously UConn blew them out in the semis, the Final Four. But the Final Four is in Phoenix. So they have a much different path. They go, first 2 games would be at home. If they win this weekend, then it would be Sacramento. And then it would be Phoenix. So you're talking about an hour flight, essentially, either way. So I think it's kind of set up that you may see a rematch, or you'll at least you'll have a chance for a deep run, and I think that could end up being as a team that's lost 1 game, UConn's undefeated, so that could be a historically good team, UCLA, by the time this season is over. So imagine in LA, just in Los Angeles, you'd have the women's programs as good as they are at both UCLA and USC. I'm telling you, the women outdrew the men at USC a year ago.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the final numbers this year, but it's a real thing. UCLA's women's gymnastics team sold out Pauley Pavilion over the weekend, drew 13,000 to a dual meet against Utah. Women's gymnastics. So it's a really exciting time for women's sports. Flag football is a new sport at USC. It's a club sport, but I think it's maybe on its way to being down the road a varsity sport. And it's going to be a sport in the Olympics, flag football for men in the 28 Olympics. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of really exciting things going on the women's side. And, it's really fun to be here in LA and looking ahead to the Olympics in just 2 years.
Yeah, I was watching some of the games of the FIBA qualifiers that they're having right now. And, man, seeing Paige, Angel, and Caitlin coming off the bench right now, and you still got Juju in college and,
yes,
Alijah, and the talent that is up and coming in women basketball and women's sports in general right now is amazing. And I truly hope that, these players and the Players Association are able to leverage that as much as possible to get what they deserve in this new collective bargaining agreement that they're negotiating. And it's on the rise, and it would be smart for these ownership groups, because most of them also own some NBA teams, so they got the money.
Yes,
figure it out.
Yes,
pay these women, and hopefully we can continue to enjoy it and witness the growth of the sport, and just reward them as at the level that they truly desire for the product that they put out there.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Professor Fellenzer, it's been a pleasure to have you on the program. I truly appreciate your time and your insights on everything that we've discussed. And I truly wish you the best for all your future endeavors. And I'll definitely get you on the program another time if you still have the time.
I look forward to that, Femi. It's an honor to be on with you. I hope your audience enjoys this, and I hope they enjoy all of your shows coming up. You do a great job, and you have a lot going for you. I look forward to just things that you're going to do down the road, and as you continue your journey. So thank you again for including me today.
Thank you, sir.
Really appreciate it.